The town was not on any modern map.
It existed only in the pages of an 1892 ledger, buried in the archives of a forgotten library.
Faded ink, cracked paper, a name stamped in blood-colored wax. Durnholme. A mining village tucked so deep into a mist-choked valley, not even the sun bothered to rise. Fog lingered like a warning, and moss grew over road signs that hadn't pointed anywhere in decades. But it was once alive. Children played hopscotch on cobblestones, steam coiled from chimney tops. And each morning at exactly 6:06 a.m., the bell tower of St. Caligo rang. Never earlier, never later. 6 rings, always 6. Until the day it stopped. No sirens, no screams, no fire. Just stillness. The last diary recovered from the town ended with 3 words. It breathed again. When a government cartographer came through 3 weeks later, he found no buildings, no ruins. Only a still black lake where the valley once was. It had no name. He dipped a branch in. It came out dry. He dropped a stone in. No sound, no splash, no ripples, and Durnholme was gone. Locals nearby warned not to speak of it, said the mine had opened more than just a tunnel. Said prayers in that church had reached something beneath the soil, and it had listened. One old man swore he heard the bell again, decades later. 6 chimes muffled, rising from beneath the lake at exactly 6:06 a.m. He was found dead the next morning. Face pale, mouth full of black silt. Authorities marked it as natural causes. The lake remains unmarked off every map, surrounded by trees that lean away from it. At night, the frogs stop croaking when the moon hits the surface. And sometimes, just before dawn, you can hear footsteps on water. A visitor once tried to swim across. He made it halfway before he began to scream. Not from pain, from realization. He said something was whispering, inside his mind, telling him the bell never stopped ringing, telling him the town was not gone, only sleeping. And sleep, as we know, is never permanent. Now, if you ever find yourself near the edge of that black lake, and if the mist clears just for a moment, don't look too long into the water, because you may not like what looks back. He came back. The cartographer. After the first visit, he could not sleep. He could not map another road, nor chart another line. Something had changed inside him. The soundless lake had not just taken the town, it had taken part of him. He returned with equipment, an old reel-to-reel recorder, a wind meter, a brass compass passed down by his father, and a notebook, which he filled with careful, obsessive handwriting. Every morning, every evening, every breath. He built a small shack on the northern ridge of the lake, a place where the mist always lingered a bit longer, as if reluctant to lift. The locals avoided him. They whispered he had been marked, that he had heard the bell. But he didn't mind the silence. He waited. And on the 7th day, at exactly 6:06 a.m., the recorder clicked on by itself. It had not been programmed. It had not been touched. But it spun. The reel turned and the lake remained still. He listened to the playback that night in the dark, with one hand shaking over the stop button. The bell was there. Muffled, distant, underwater. 6 chimes, slow, deep. But there was something else, beneath the ringing. Voices, not speaking, not whispering, humming, like children humming in class beneath their breath. One note, one tone. It vibrated through his ribs. He began recording every morning, always at 6:06 a.m. And every morning the bell returned, louder each time. The voices, too, became clearer. They were not humming anymore. They were chanting. Not in Latin, not in English, a language he had never heard. But somehow, he understood. The words meant hunger, return, hollow. He stopped sleeping. He began to dream while awake. He saw streets beneath the lake, cobblestones without algae, lampposts still lit. He saw a woman in a red apron waving to him from beneath the surface, as if nothing had changed, as if the world above had been the one to drown. He began sketching the town from memory, except he had never seen it before, not truly. And yet his hand moved with certainty. Every building, every alley, every face. He remembered names he had never learned, children he had never met. One name kept appearing, Elswith, a girl with pale blue eyes and no shadow. He heard her voice on the tape, clearer than the others. "Why did you leave us?" she asked. Not in anger, not in fear, just curiosity. He did not know how to answer. The shack began to rot faster than wood should. His food went uneaten. He placed the recorder closer to the lake. One morning, he found it floating on the porch, dry, untouched, but filled with static. He played it anyway, and this time the bell rang 13 times. Then silence. Then breathing. Not his own, close, right behind him. He turned. No one was there. But the air was heavy, like someone had just left the room. That night, he wrote only one sentence in his notebook. The bell does not summon us to them. It reminds them that we are still here. The lake has grown darker, and every time the bell rings now, he feels it in his teeth. They are listening. They are remembering. They are not gone, only waiting. And the bell is not for the dead. It's for the ones who forgot. He stopped calling it a lake. By the third week, he began referring to it only as the mirror, because it no longer reflected the sky, and it reflected something else. A street lamp, a clock tower, a child swaying without wind, images on the surface that didn't exist above, only below. But not like a normal reflection. They moved. Even when he didn't, he thought it was madness. He hoped it was madness, until he tested it. One morning he stood perfectly still, but in the mirror, the version of himself took one step forward. He fell backward in horror. But the surface never rippled. That night, he dreamt of cobblestones beneath bare feet, cold, smooth, familiar. He was walking through Durnholme. It looked alive, windows lit with golden lanterns, smoke curling from chimneys, the bakery's door ajar. But the people weren't right. They smiled too long, moved without blinking. Children played, but they never made a sound, just turned their heads to follow him. And all the while the bell rang slowly from somewhere high above, though there was no tower in sight. He woke with his fingers pruned as if from hours underwater. The next morning, he stood at the edge of the mirror and whispered one word: Elswith. The water rippled for the first time, and then cleared. And there she was, at the bottom, beneath impossible depth, looking up at him, smiling, lips moving. No bubbles. She raised a hand and pointed behind her. He leaned closer. Behind her was Durnholme, the whole town, not in ruins, not silted or drowned, standing, still, waiting. He waded into the lake. It was cold but not wet, heavy but not suffocating. The deeper he went, the more he saw. Street signs with his name carved into them. A shopkeeper who looked like his brother, though he had never had one. He felt the town breathing, not as lungs but as memory. It remembered everything, everyone, even him, though he had never lived there. He reached the square. The bell tower was whole again. The hands on the clock stuck at 6:06, but the bell wasn't ringing now, because he was here, and there was no need to call anymore. They had remembered him. A man with no past now belonged to a place that no longer lived. And beneath the lake, Durnholme still breathed. Not out of hope, but out of ritual. The kind that feeds on remembrance. The kind that only needs one thing to grow stronger. A witness, and now it had one. He found the book buried beneath the floorboards of the bakery. A thick, wet ledger wrapped in waxed cloth bound with hair instead of thread. The cover was blank, but the pages knew his name. Not written, whispered. Every time he opened it, he felt colder. Not on his skin, but in his memory. He began to forget things. His parents' faces, his last name, the city he had left behind. All that remained was Durnholme. The book was a record of names, births, deaths. But some entries were written backward, or in loops that bled off the page. Some names appeared twice, once in black ink and once in red. The red names had no birth date, only a time, 6:06. He turned the page and found his own name, though he had not written it. It was in red. He tried to burn the book. It would not catch. He tried to throw it into the lake. It returned the next morning, dripping water onto his pillow, open to a new page. The name, Elswith. Beneath it, a phrase in a script he could not translate. He began to dream of her differently now. No longer a child beneath the lake, but a woman standing in a circle of stones. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Around her feet were objects, teeth, coins, feathers, a jawbone. He remembered the chapel then, the one they had buried before the town vanished. He walked the ruins of it, though no one had walked those streets in decades. The walls were intact beneath the lake, though the roof was missing. Inside, he found carvings on the floor, circles within circles. A name repeated again and again, the hollowed one. He whispered it aloud. The lake bubbled. The bell rang 13 times, and then stopped. The town went still. Every window turned dark. Every door swung shut. He was no longer welcome. Or perhaps no longer needed. That night the book opened on its own. His name had faded. A new one had taken its place. But he couldn't read it because the letters rearranged every time he tried. All he knew was this: he had not remembered the town. The town had remembered him, and now it was remembering others, pulling them in, rewriting their names. Some towns mark history with plaques or statues. Durnholme marks it in people, in the mind, in the blood. And once you are written into its story, you cannot be erased, only overwritten. The mine had always been wrong. Even before the lake, before the chapel, before the bells, the original miners reported voices in the dark. Not echoes, voices. Language without mouth or breath. They called it the crooked vein, not because of the rock, but because of what ran through it. The deeper they dug, the warmer the air became. Not hot like coal fires, wet like breath. The mine shafts grew twisted. Tunnels looped back into themselves. A man could walk for 5 hours and end up where he started, but with different shoes. They stopped bringing canaries. The birds would not sing. They simply sat, staring into the dark until they fell over. But the town was desperate for prosperity, and deeper they went. At shaft 13, the pickaxes struck something soft, not rock, not soil, something that pulsed when touched. One man, a foreman named Cutter, placed his palm against it. He screamed, but not from pain. He screamed because he saw something. His mother. His death. A house he had never been to but knew every detail of. When they pulled him back, he was blind and smiling. He said, "It has teeth," and then bit off his own tongue. The mine was sealed, quietly, no reports, no funerals, just dirt. And above that dirt they built the chapel, not to pray, but to keep it asleep. The rituals began subtly. Bread left at the altar, blood pricked from the fingertip, a hymn that ended on the wrong note. But the town stayed quiet. For a while, then the bells changed. No longer 6 tones, 13, slower, deeper. Something shifted. Beneath the ground, the crops grew faster, but tasted of ash. The children spoke of visitors in their dreams. Hollow men with lanterns inside their chests. One child went missing, then another. And then the lake came, overnight. Not rain, not flood, arising, as if the earth exhaled, and water took its place. The town did not drown. It sank, willingly. The hunger had grown too large to contain. And what had been fed prayers for decades now wanted bodies. Remember this: Durnholme was not lost. It was given, offered, like a candle dropped into a deep well. What waits beneath its surface does not sleep. It waits. And it remembers the taste of names, especially yours. The lake is gone. It did not drain or dry or recede. It vanished. One morning, the cartographer opened the door to his shack and found earth. Black, soft breathing. Where water once lay still, now stood the outline of a town. Not ruins, not rubble, but a perfect replica of Durnholme. Every window unbroken, every brick clean. No moss, no rust, as if it had never left. But it had changed. The air was too still. The birds would not land. The sky above it remained gray even when the sun returned elsewhere. He walked its streets in silence. His footsteps made no sound. He passed the bakery, the chapel, the old post office, all exactly as he had drawn them in his notebook. Not how they had been, but how he had imagined them. That's when he realized this was not a resurrection. It was a memory. The town had been rebuilt from recollection, not reality. But whose? He entered the chapel. It was whole again. The bell tower above him ticked faintly, but the clock face was gone. Inside, rows of pews sat in perfect order, and on each pew, a figure, not people, not statues, shapes, as if memory had tried to recreate. Townsfolk without fully remembering them. Faces blurred. Limbs slightly wrong. Some too tall, some still, some breathing. They turned toward him in unison. None spoke. None blinked. One in the front row reached out a hand. It was hers, Ellsworth, but she was older now. Or perhaps younger. Or perhaps not a child at all. She placed something in his hand, a small bell, warm to the touch, vibrating gently. The moment he held it, the others began to hum. That same note he had heard in his tapes, the same tone buried under the chimes. It filled the chapel. It filled him. And then, all at once, they stopped. He looked down. The bell was gone. But something else was in its place, his compass. Its needle spun wildly, not pointing north, but down, toward the floor, toward the mine. He walked outside. The town was still there, watching, waiting. Behind him, the chapel bell rang once, then again, 13 times. He did not flinch, because he finally understood. Durnholme had not risen for him. It had risen because it had enough of him to copy, to remember, to rebuild itself not from stone or wood, but from witness. The cartographer's work was done, but the town was just beginning, because now it could grow, spread, appear where other memories had thinned, where other names had been forgotten. Towns are not made from buildings. They are made from belief, from blood, from sacrifice, and once remembered, they never truly vanish. Durnholme is no longer under the lake. It is in you. And one day, when you are least expecting it, a bell will ring, soft, distant, familiar, at exactly 6:06 a.m., and when it does, you will feel the water rise behind your eyes, and know it has returned. You've heard the whisper beneath the water. You've seen the bell that still rings in dreams. This was one of many, a tale carved from silence, and sanctified in shadow. There are more, much more, but only for those who stay. This is Sanctified Secrets, and some things were never meant to be found.